Hello, Mike Barrett here again from acethesat.com and also from testingiseasy.com. And in this third part of my three-part video series, I'm going to explain to you how we can take the lessons that we learned about writing the SAT essay and apply them more broadly to the entire SAT itself. You definitely want to make sure you pay attention to this video. Paying attention to it can save you a whole bunch of trouble and frustration. So in the first two videos, we talked about how the College Board grades the essays, why they grade them in that way, and then we talked about all of the things that 12 scoring essays actually tend to do, and how different those things are from what's in the rubric, what's in the scoring guide, I should say, and also from the things that you would do to get a good score on a real essay in school. So now I'd like to kind of recap all that stuff and then explain again how you should let these things influence the rest of your SAT prep. So let's start by reviewing all the ways that the SAT is a bad thing. First of all, the length is the most important factor in the score, which is not true of real writing, but of course is true of the SAT essay. Academic examples are irrelevant. The truth is irrelevant, right? Spelling and grammar, pretty much irrelevant. You don't get a whole bunch of time for editing, which of course is one of the major parts of real writing, right? As they say, when you take a writing class, writing is mostly rewriting, right? Well, you can't do any rewriting really at all on the SAT essay. And the SAT essay does not reward you for considering counter-arguments, even though in real life that's something that a good author would do. So once again, I just want to point out, this is nothing like a real essay. And if you approach it as though it were a real essay, you will be in trouble. So that kind of raises the question, well, how should you practice for the essay? Most SAT instructors will tell you to write in a way that does what the rubric, the scoring guide, says you should do. But we've already seen that's a terrible idea, right? The graders themselves in many cases have told us that the rubric does not really reflect anything. And if you just look at the actual essays, you know the things that score high are not the things that the College Board says should score high. So really, really important idea here. You want to practice for the SAT essay by writing in a way that mimics other successful SAT essays. And towards that end, a copy of the College Board's book, The Official SAT Study Guide, is really, really useful here because that book contains a whole bunch of practice essays that you can look at with their scores, you know, essays that have already been graded by SAT graders. And you can look at those things and figure out, you know, all the stuff that we talked about, see how it applies. And when you write a practice essay, you'll be able to compare your essay to the things we talked about here and to the things that you see in the 12 scoring essays. Now, this is a very, very important idea to understand because just as you would get ready for the SAT essay by ignoring what the College Board says you should do and by looking at what the College Board actually punishes and rewards, you should get ready for every other part of the SAT in the same way. It's important to understand the SAT math section is not really a math test, just like the essay is not really an essay test, right? The reading is not really a reading test, the writing is not really a writing test, and so on and so forth. So just as we get ready for the SAT essay by ignoring what the College Board says and looking at what it actually does, we should do the same for all other parts of the test. Okay? So let me continue with my discussion of how the SAT essay compares to the rest of the test. There's a lot of terrible advice floating around out there about how to write SAT essays. When I deal with clients one-on-one, I almost always start with the SAT essay, and I always have them tell me what types of advice they've been given before. Because almost everybody who comes to me after having a really terrible experience with a traditional tutor. And so, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about and things we can change and fix and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ways that you could go about writing a 12, but most of them have you spending your time and effort on things that the College Board doesn't really care about, and then to end up getting the 12, you kind of almost have to get lucky and sort of accidentally do the things that the College Board graders do reward, the things that we've talked about in the previous videos. So among the terrible ideas that I have heard are ideas like, you know, people should read novels over the summer so that they can have a whole bunch of literary examples, you know, stored up in their memories that they can use to write these essays well. I'm going to go ahead and say don't do that at all for reasons we've already talked about, right? The graders don't care if you use literary examples, and even if they did care, you can totally make them up because they're not allowed to fact check things. So if you wanted to have a literary example, there's literally nothing to stop you from just making one up and writing it down as though it were a real thing. Okay. Also, I've heard a lot of people tell me that they've been told that they need to have like examples of certain types, or so many that are historical, so many that are literary, whatever it is. This is not true at all either, for reasons that we've already seen, right? I've heard people say that they should study vocabulary so that their vocabularies can be good in the essay. But if you look at the essays that score 12s, the vast majority of them don't use a whole bunch of big words or obscure words. They just use straightforward writing so that the reader can understand what the person is saying, right? I've also heard that you should try to hook the reader in the beginning and get them interested in what you have to say. This is completely ludicrous because, first of all, the grader is not in any way interested in what you have to say. I'm sorry, that's just the reality of the situation. Second of all, they're obligated by their jobs to read the essay anyway, so it's not like they can just put it down after the first sentence and go, I'm giving this guy a 2, this thing sucks. They can't do that at all. They have to read the whole thing, so the notion of trying to hook them or any of these types of things is well, it's absurd, frankly. Especially also when you look at the things that score 12s and you see they're not trying to hook the readers at all. The first sentences of those essays tend to be direct responses to the question, stated in very plain language and very non-colorful terms. Along the same lines, I've had a lot of people tell me that their tutors told them that they should try to inform or amuse the reader. Again, I can't stress enough how silly that idea is. The reader is not even really paying full attention to what you write anyway, right? If we think about the time factor and what the graders, tell us in quotes like the ones I put up in the first video, no one is scrutinizing this or even really paying much attention to it anyway when they read it. So you trying to reach out and make like a human person-to-person connection with this grader is well, it's just absurd. And just as we have all of this bad advice floating out there about the SAT essay, the rest of the test, also suffers from a similar set of misconceptions that are out there. So most of the advice that people will give you is not good, right? Most of it is based on making the mistake of taking the SAT at face value, right? So just like we come up with a lot of these bad ideas, if we try to write the SAT essay by thinking about how you would write a real essay, you'll get similar horrible ideas if you try to take the SAT math test in a way that would work well on school math tests, or if you try to read passage-based reading questions in a way that would work well in your English class, and so on and so forth, okay? So again, very, very crucial to understand that just as the SAT essay should not be treated like an essay, the rest of the test should not be treated like an essay either. Now here's another important thing. If we can come up with a way to analyze and game something as potentially wide open and subjective as the essay, imagine what we can do with multiple choice questions, because multiple choice questions are much more limited in the way that they are constructed. And as I said in the very beginning of the first video, the College Board has always used multiple choice format because that format allows them a very high degree of reliability and standardization. If we can focus on what those standards are and take them apart, we basically have, as close as we can come, we have a copy of the test before we take it, so to speak. All right. In other words, we know exactly what's going to be on there. We know exactly how to respond when we see it. We may not know exactly which specific words will be in which questions, but we do know how the questions will be constructed and how to take them apart. All right. Now here's the final thing I want to point out, another very important, very broad similarity between the SAT essay, or preparing for the SAT essay and preparing for the actual SAT, and that is this. You'll probably notice that the right way to do the SAT essay is a lot easier than the right way to do a real essay in school, right? Just to recap, length is the most important thing. The quality of what you say is really not that important. The examples don't have to be true or factual. There doesn't need to be any planning. All of these things really make the SAT essay a lot easier than a school essay. Well, the whole test is like that. If you learn the right way to take apart SAT math, it becomes way easier than real math. If you learn the right way to do passage-based reading, it becomes way easier than literature class, and so on and so on and so on. So if your style of SAT preparation is causing you a lot of frustration and not getting you anywhere, it's not necessarily a problem with you. It is almost definitely a problem with the way that you're preparing in the first place. So think about the lessons we've learned from taking apart the SAT essay, and I hope that you will continue to follow those types of ideas in your preparation for the rest of the test as well. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching all of these videos. Do maybe go back and watch them again, because there's a lot of good ideas in here, and we kind of had to fly through them to make the videos short enough to be postable on YouTube. So go make sure that you understand everything that we've talked about and that you really incorporate that into your process. I also just want to point out, people who've found this interesting have also really enjoyed what I have over at testingiseasy.com. I hope you might go take a look at that if you'd like more of the same stuff. So thanks again for watching. This again has been Mike Barrett for acedSAT.com and for testingiseasy.com. And I will see you around, and go get them.